The seventh step in the success formula, the path to riches of the 13, is decision. And this is really a crucial chapter because we're going to get to look back on some opportunities you've had to make decisions already and see how you did with them. But let's just take care of a little administrative stuff first. In the document we're using, it's sections 22 and 23, and there is a workbook section. Now, I want you to take the test that's in the workbook, and as always, that's for your eyes only, but share it with a confidant. Share, we got nature going on here?
They're doing it.
Okay. I love living in Hawaii. But as always, make sure that a confidant, someone that you know and trust, will look at the assessment or give it to them over the phone and see how they did with yours. Don't defend any of your choices. See that as opportunities to discover maybe a blind spot that you had. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different in this particular video. Grab yourself a piece of paper, and I want you to draw this on it. It's really 8 columns. We're going to have eight rows and columns here. So this one is going to be names. Okay, and what I want you to do is you're going to draw, you're going to have 4 little boxes after the name, and you're going to have a place for 8 names. So I want you to stop the video now. 1 second. Stop the video when I say stop the video, and draw out this little grid for yourself. There might be a document of it down there, but if there isn't, just go ahead and draw it out. It's just a quick exercise. And make sure that you have a row for names, or column for names, 8 of them, and then 4 little boxes next to each one. And then we're going to come back and complete this exercise. Now notice, right now you have an opportunity to make a decision. The decision is, I'm going to do the exercise because I really want to learn something, or I'm going to evaluate whether or not I want to take it. Those are both decisions. Make the best one for yourself. Do the exercise. Okay, so we're going to stop the video right now. Okay, so you're back. So you have names like Tom and Sally and Joanne. Okay, and what I want you to do is put a D here above this column on that piece of paper, and put an I here. And then what I want you to do is make a decision. Is Tom decisive? If he is, put a check mark there. If Sally is indecisive, put a check mark there. So you want to finish all 8 of these, and I'm going to give you 10 seconds to do that because you already have the 8 names. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we're done with that. If you're having a tough time figuring out if they're decisive or indecisive people, then obviously you're sort of indecisive, which this chapter is trying to help you understand how deleterious that is to what you really want. Then what you want to write, and this is a great thing to do with your team, and I'll show you what the R2A2 is as far as recruiting. And then you're going to put an S over this column, and you're going to put a U over this column. So I think you can see why we didn't want to put the document in there, because we didn't want to tip anything off. So now we have more names here. Of course, you have 8 names, and you have these check marks of whether they're successful or unsuccessful, whether they're decisive or undecisive. And now you're going to make the same decision. Are they successful? And you'll find that there is almost a direct correlation between, I mean, every once in a while there's a little bit of a variation, but you're going to find something out really interesting, aren't you? So take 5 seconds and do that, because it shouldn't take you more than 5 seconds to run that list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll give you 2 more seconds. You should see a pattern between the people that are decisive and successful and the people that are indecisive and unsuccessful. So if you're not decisive, how can you expect prospects to be? This is what I run into all the time. I run into all the time with distributors that I work with. They all seem to run into the same objection. You know, Harry always seems to run into people that don't have money. Rita always seems to run into people that think it's a pyramid. Well, they don't know, even though I try to help them, and eventually we do help them. They don't know that they're drawing that in based on their personal consciousness. It's not an accident that Harry's always running into people that don't have money, because obviously Harry's pitching people that don't have money. But fundamentally, what the point of this is, and what I'm saying about, is if you're running into, and this is the biggest problem most distributors have, you've talked to a prospect, they've agreed to look at the information, you've used the upfront contracts, they've agreed to look at the information, they've gone and looked at the information, and you can't quite get them to make a decision. That's a telltale that you're indecisive. And you absolutely have to be 100% decisive if you want to be successful. Is every decision you make going to be the right and perfect one? No. But they're really simple decisions that we face all day long in network marketing, particularly once you've mastered 101 and the striking interest of the firelighter portion of it. So it's really up to you. Now, in the UFC section module called Upfront Contracts, I was really frustrated that people weren't making decisions, and I came across this information that I'm now sharing with you, and I really took seriously the Think and Grow Rich stuff, because I always felt that I was decisive, but that assessment test clearly showed me that I wasn't. Once I made a decision, it was made, but it was so much time to making decisions, it's really a way of being indecisive. Does that make sense? So in the upfront contracts, you'll find that when I sit down and talk with a prospect, they're going to tell me yes, they're going to tell me no, and they're not going to tell me maybe. Now the reason that is in part because of the upfront contract, but because I made a decision that after they've reviewed information, it's time to collect a decision. And of course I can do that because I know how to keep the funnel full because of the framed firelighters. Does that make sense to you? In other words, if you can keep funneling people in, and our job is collecting decisions. And if you're not a decision maker, how can you expect prospects to be able to make decisions comfortably? The answer is you can't. When I walk into a meeting or I get on the phone with a prospect to collect a decision, they know why I'm there. I make it clear in the first 30 to 40 seconds that we're going to say yes, we're going to say no, but we're not going to say maybe. And I get a decision. Does it always go the way that I want it to go? Absolutely not. But what's our job? A distributor's job, clearly defined, when you get down to it, is one simple thing. Our job is to collect decisions from prospects as to whether or not they want to be distributors or customers. That's our job. And sometimes they say no to both, but that's our job. And the more decisive you become, the easier it is to collect decisions because they know that about you. So, let's take a little quick inventory. You've been through the stuff about a definite major purpose. Do you have your definite major purpose written out? Is it written out the way that it is suggested in Think and Grow Rich? Have you accessed us to make sure that the wording is correct on it, that it's in the right tense, that it's specific, that it's measurable, and all that stuff, okay? That is really important. Have you made a decision to not do auto-suggestion, not to read that goal statement out loud with unbridled enthusiasm? See, here's the point. We look around online. We sit with our friends. We lament with our upline. We lament with people sometimes even on our downline. That's a big mistake. We lament with people crossline. I just want to be successful. I just want to be successful. And what do people do? They look around online for magic formulas to make them successful, and you're currently reading the granddaddy of them all. Not for nothing, but Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, all these great guys, they all got every single piece of information that they used out of Think and Grow Rich. So fundamentally, have you made a decision to do the exercises? Now, look, I'm not here to confront you. I'm here to confront you about decision. Take that inventory. Do you have that stuff written out? Are you reading it out loud 3 times a day? Have you set aside that last hour of the day to think about what your life is going to be like when you manifest these things so that you're emotionally attached to it? Most people don't do that. How many people don't do it? Well, that's pretty interesting because the Think and Grow Rich study clearly showed that 95% of all people don't have a DMP that they backed with a burning desire through the things like auto-suggesting and reading it out loud. And guess what? 95% of all Americans are either dead, flat broke, or still working at age 65. 95 out of 100. I don't know about you and where you come from, but in New England, where I come from, and I brought the same philosophy here, someone would be able to figure out there's a clue here. There's a link between those two things. So, you know, decide to commit to your definite major purpose, or take a look at why you've decided not to commit to it. Really simple. But the point is, get in the habit of making decisions. Get in the habit of making decisions. You know, when a waitress comes over to the table, I already know what I'm going to have unless I have a question. And as soon as she answers the question, I'm either going to get that entree or I'm going to get a different one. Be decisive, because if you want people to make decisions that you're interacting with, remember that's our job, we need to be decisive. Now, one of the things about a DMP, somebody asked, actually it was a little comment that they made and said, how do you deal with this? And it was a really interesting question. And it reminded me of something that happened to me in 1994 when the success run started for us, when we started to apply not only the skills that you're learning, but this core philosophy to everything that we do. I said, you know, this stuff doesn't really sound like me. And he said something that was a direction change, changed the direction of my life in a much better way. He said, well, let me ask you this, Mark. How is sounding like you working out for you? I was like, ooh. It was like an arrow in my heart. It hurt. But you know what? I was grateful. So I started reading that definite major purpose out loud at the top of my lungs every night. And of course, that's become a habit. See, what decisiveness does is it ignites our imagination. Because once we decide, then we start peppering our subconscious mind with it. And once the subconscious mind takes hold of it, what happens is the imagination gets activated. And an imagined experience over and over and over again is indistinguishable from what really happened in real life in our minds. Something you imagine over and over and over and over again, you know, the smell, the touch, the feel, and what it's going to be like and what your feeling's going to be like. If you do it enough times, your mind does not know the difference between that and something that actually happened. And why is that important? Well, it's really important because once the subconscious mind takes control of that idea, once it buys it as a reality, it then starts to direct our actions. And this is why everything that I'm telling you about decision is so important. Folks, we all have fears. It's just part of life. Some of us overcome them and some of us don't. But the ones that overcome them would Think and Grow Rich. At the core of all of that is the catharsis of what Hill's telling you is the secret that's on basically in every chapter and basically on every page. What happens is the subconscious mind begins to direct our actions, and that's where courage comes from. If I waited to get the courage to do the things that I had to do to build a network marketing organization, to move here in Hawaii, it would have never happened. How did it happen? Because I made a decision, I activated my imagination around that decision, and that's what gave us the courage. As things came up that we feared, the subconscious mind had created a demand in my life. Now, what's the R2, A2 for this as far as recruiting in your business goes? Well, kind of touched on this a little bit. Our job is what? Collecting decisions. And if you don't make them, you can't expect to get them. Like attracts like. So the reason that Harry is always running into people that are really interested and they're going to join next week and then they're going to join next week and then when they get their tax check, that's just indecisive bullcrap. The reason that that happens to Harry is not decisive. Decisive, the word decision actually comes from the Latin word decidere, and it means to cut yourself off from any other possibility. Here's the greatest thing I can tell you about being decisive. We've all had this feeling, we walk towards the car and we reach for our keys and we can't find them, and we do the FBI pat down We see the keys ignition, we see the door locked, but we try it anyway. And then of course we run around to the other side of the car and we try that side. Then we prove we believe in miracles because we come back to the driver's side and do it. But right there, right at that point in time, something really interesting happens. You make a decision that you're going to get in the car. You're going to call your wife, you're going to call your husband, you're going to call AAA, you're going to call the dealership. There's no way that you're going to abandon the car. And right in that tiny little spot, you made a decision, I got to do what I got to do to get in the car. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. There's no difference between making a decision to get in a car that you've locked the keys in and living beachfront in Hawaii. There is no difference. The difference between the people that want to live in their own personal Kauai and do, and the ones that don't, is decision. So get decisive. I hope you've taken the test. I hope that little grid exercise helped you make those decisions, and let's rock and roll on to the next chapter. Peace be the journey. Decide.